issues that we might encounter along the way. As I said, there's no power here in the office. Um, so we are gonna try to make it through it. So it's 6:35. Steve, are you there with us?
Hold it a second. Yes.
Okay, good. So it's six
Are we,
thirty-five.
are we gonna be able to keep track of the board members who are part of this hearing? Is there any way to take attendance?
On a special hearing, I don't believe that we need attendance because we're not either voting or passing any
No,
resolutions.
but if it's
So,
useful to know, maybe if it's possible.
all right. And again, I am extremely limited, technologically limited to anything. I'm trying to use my cell phone. There's no power here at the office.
And
So.
hey, Steve, it's Nobles. I'll be taking minutes report tonight, and I can go through the Zoom panelist list to try to pick off people I can.
All right, thank you.
I would ask for CB12 members, if you could please put your actual name in the Zoom as your attendee name. That would help me out when it comes to getting the attendance. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Noble. And now that you're there, I don't want to put an extra layer at work. You, because again, I don't have any. I'm trying to join in from my cell phone. Help me with the stacks.
Help me with stacks?
Yes.
I don't understand that.
When people raise their hands for
that might be a bit tough if I'm taking notes.
Okay, so I have
Jonathan, you can help out with that, right?
Sure, I can handle it too.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, same time we are handling the live videos.
Okay, so it's 6:37, and I want to make sure that we get going. So I'd like to, again, I'm extremely humbled and happy to share this platform with so many well-intentioned people, people who really and truly care about their community, people who are willing and able to give up their time and effort and energy to make sure that um, we come into a civil understanding uh, as to how to bring city agencies, the police department, to come and sit down and discuss some of the issues that are affecting us directly. And again, thank you for those of you who were willing to come and enjoy this opportunity. I'd like to also say before I pass the baton to Steve Simon, who will be introducing the panelists, that when we come and unite as one, we can do wonders. And I'm sure that all of you were participant and mindful of what the rebel scooter issue had been happening in our community. And our voice and the letter and the push by Congressman Espaillat helped wonders. It helped us to resolve an issue that had been affecting us in all kinds of ways, safety-wise, security-wise, in all kinds of ways. So I think should be a continuation of that effort, should be a continuation of our togetherness, continuation of putting our differences aside and collaboratively work and have one mission and one vision. So having said that, I'm gonna have Steve Simon move along and make the presentation, and I'll be helping along the way. Steve,
All right. Okay, I just want to outline the agenda because I'm not sure that we had a chance to send it out to people. So we have a lineup of very good lineup of speakers headed by Deputy Chief Russell Green from Patrol Borough Manhattan North of the NYPD. He is joined by Deputy Inspector Peter Andrea from the 34th Precinct and Captain Wai Kwang Chung from the 33rd Precinct. They will be followed by Christian Klausner, the Executive Director of the Mayor's Office of Special Enforcement, Geraldine Telpin, the Director for Air, Noise Policy and Enforcement for the Department of Environmental Protection, Deputy Inspector Benny McCants, the Director of Citywide Operations for the Parks Enforcement Patrol, Emily Goldman, the Deputy Director of Beta NYC, and last but certainly not least, Dr. Arlene Bronzaft, a longtime board member of Grow NYC, formerly known as the Council on the Environment, and recognized for years as a citywide expert on noise issues. Following the speakers, we will go into the public session, and at that point, I see that people have already asked whether or not they can ask questions. They should raise their hands at that point so that they can be recognized. I want to also acknowledge that we're joined by Jeremy Krim from the First Deputy Mayor's Office and Isaiah Jenkins, the Manhattan Borough Director of the Mayor's Community Affairs Unit. And I want to thank Isaiah for helping line up the speakers for us. And I also want to thank Natalie Espino from the Manhattan Borough President's Office for her assistance and advice. So if we could now begin with Deputy Chief Green.
Deputy Chief, you with us? Maybe can Jonathan help him unmute himself.
Okay, there it goes.
Okay,
Sorry about
good.
that. I was on mute. So good evening, everybody. Good evening, Community Board 12. My name is Deputy Chief Russ Green, Executive Officer, Manhattan North. Happy to join the call. Unfortunately, I would never received any agenda, so I don't really have anything specific to comment on. We asked a few times, but nobody was able to provide that. So I'm happy to stand by and answer any questions that I may be of assistance with, and I'll defer to the CO to 3-4 and the XO to 3-3 who are on the call. Anybody has any questions?
Yeah. Let me just explain that, we sort of were scrambling to put this hearing together on short notice. We had originally intended to do this later in August, and we were going to hold a hearing tonight about the Revel Motors bikes. And then when they withdrew, we then moved up our hearing. And I did send something late today, but I guess it didn't make its way to you. But I'm sure there'll be plenty of opportunity for you to provide input as we get to the public session. And I certainly appreciate your participation.
Sure, you're very welcome.
Deputy Inspector Andrea.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Pete Andrea, 3-4 Precinct. I got a little bit of an understanding that it might be about some noise complaints, but I'm just going to go over the status and the state of the 3-4 Precinct currently and some of the things we're experiencing. Currently, the 3-4 Precinct, focusing on major crimes and violent crimes, we're actually doing very well compared to the stuff that you see going around the city. We've been able to make sure that that kind of environment did not foster itself here in the 3-4. Currently, overall crime for the year to date in 3-4 Precinct is down about 8%, 653 versus 711 this time this year. So I feel very confident going halfway through the summer, being doing that well overall in crime. Shooting incidents, we're slightly above in shooting incidents. We're 11 versus 9. We're not having a chaotic year as you've seen in Brooklyn and Bronx. We seem to be holding our own over here. Our overall calls, in the 3-4 Precinct is generally in a 20-day period. We have about 8,000 911 calls and about 6,000 other 311 calls. That's the amount of jobs that the 3-4 Precinct officers handle in a 28-day period, which we measure. All of our crime stats is based on a 28-day period, which is our so-called month, so to speak. So we measure crime, how we're doing year to date and also the 20-day period compared to last year. So that's our month of measurement. As far as traffic conditions, we did have a slow in productivity and enforcement during the COVID months. But now that we're a little bit back, somewhat back to normal, now that we're on the stages of opening up businesses, the officers are out there enforcing traffic conditions as best they can. So we're actually doing pretty well.
All right, thank you, Deputy Inspector. Captain Chung.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I just want to, so I'll start off, follow Inspector Andreas, lead. With the crime, we're down for robberies this 28-day period, 8 compared to 10 last year. I think the NCOs are doing a great job with that. We're really stressing, you know what, I think majority of our robberies are delivery people. So I know I came from housing, and when I used to patrol the housing developments and I see a delivery guy making deliveries, I would sit out front and wait till the guy comes out and make sure he leaves the scene before I leave. You know, anytime, it's my part of being proactive and trying to prevent something. And we've been trying to stress that to the sectors and NCOs. If they see any people delivering, you know, just hang around for a few minutes and see if anyone's bothering them. Make sure they do what they got to do and then they leave. And I think that's kind of helping us deter a lot of the robberies and bring our numbers down. Burglaries were up, unfortunately, 18 compared to 14 last year. Again, it's those package deliveries. People are, you know, breaking into the lobby, stealing the packages. Again, like I said, it's just the residents and the communities, our eyes and ears. So if someone doesn't belong in the building, or the super doesn't see someone in the video that they don't belong in the building, call 911. And that's the only way we could combat burglaries together. Is we can't be in every building, we can't see everything. GLAs, we are down 3 compared to 7 last year. Again, these delivery people, a lot of Grubhub people now are using vehicles to deliver food. They're leaving car keys in the car. It's not violent GLAs. People are actually leaving cars. We have 2 incidents like that. Keys are in the car. People are just jumping in, taking off. We're in the highway, so a lot of people going over to the Bronx, to Jersey. And I think that's the 3 major crimes for the 3-3. As far as shootings, we're down for the year, 4 compared to 5 last year. So we're doing really, really good this year compared to last year. Again, thanks to the community, thanks to the NCOs and our sectors and precinct people working together.
All right, thank you, Captain. Christian Klausner from the Office of Special Enforcement. And I guess I should mention, although you probably will, that your office has a special role to play and is of special interest in our community because you're monitoring the restaurants and bars right now during this COVID-19 period.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction and the opportunity to attend, and I look forward to hearing questions. So I'll keep my remarks short. My name is Christian Klausner. I'm the Executive Director of the Mayor's Office of Special Enforcement. Not only were we assigned to deal with reopening around restaurants and bars, but in phased reopening in general, including all kinds of retail, basically any place that wasn't allowed to be open and now is. Our office fields complaints and coordinates with a number of different agencies across the city to get out and look at the conditions on the ground and make sure that as businesses reopen, they're doing it in a way that's safe for both the community, the customers, the workers, and the business itself. The main thing that we did was set up a 311 complaint line. And so residents of this community board should know that you can go to the 311 website, or you can call 311 and make complaints about businesses that are opening but not in compliance with guidelines. You can also make a complaint about a business that is not allowed to be open but has opened anyway. And there's information on that 311 website about what those different categories are. Once a complaint is filed, inspectors will go. The business will be contacted one way or another. We're in the age of COVID, we're piloting all kinds of inspection techniques. We're doing outreach to ensure that they know what the rules are and how they comply. We're doing virtual inspections. We're sending people in person, all with the goal of building compliance so that they can open safely and we can so we can continue to move forward under the New York Forward reopening plan. For restaurants and bars in particular, there's a little bit of an overlap that I'll take a second to explain. The bars and restaurants that have outdoor dining are part of the DOT administered outdoor dining program. And so there are also restrictions for that about how late they are open, what the setup is, what's happening on the, what's happening with passage on the sidewalk. And there's a complaint page for that on 311 as well under open restaurants. And both of those complaint pages have references to each other. And so you should be able to easily navigate to the right place, or the call taker, if you're calling by phone, should be able to make sure you're in the right direction. A lot of folks want to know who will respond. We have people from all different agencies: Department of Health, Department of Buildings, Fire, Deputy Sheriff's Office, and Department of Sanitation, Department of Environmental Protection. But the key point is that the city is going to respond and make sure that the place is operating in compliance. I know that the main subject for this evening is noise. We are definitely seeing that as restaurants open up, that they can draw crowds. We're seeing two different permutations. We're seeing restaurants that are breaking the rules, and we're also seeing restaurants that are following the rules, but large crowds are gathering outside. And we have a sense that that's ongoing in this community board, and we're making sure the resources are available to look into it. I welcome to hear any particular locations or concerns, and if folks have questions about the 311 complaint process, I'm here and happy to answer. I'm sorry, I did mean to say there is also a complaint page for noise for street and sidewalk, and those are handled by the police department.
All right, thank you. It's now my pleasure to introduce Geraldine Kelpin, the Director for Air Noise Policy and Enforcement for the Department of Environmental Protection. And I should mention, if anybody in the city government knows the noise code in and out, it's Geraldine or Jerry. She's been with DEP for quite a while, a couple of decades at least, well, more than that. So Jerry, I'm so happy that you're still with DEP, and we can count on you to help us understand DEP's role in enforcing the noise code.
Thank you for that introduction. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure if I was still on mute or not. So I have been with DEP for 35 years now, but we'll put that aside for the moment, and let's talk about noise, the noise code, and some of the issues that we're seeing, especially with so many people now having to stay home, and probably an increased sensitivity to noise. The noise code is enforced by with the staff that reports to me, and the noise code can also be enforced by the police department. There are some sections that are easier for DEP to enforce, and then there are some where, since we don't have peace officer status, we do ask the police department to enforce it or join us on some of these inspections should we need police backup. So I took a look at the complaint types that were coming in from Community Board 12. I just went back from May to the present, and there were about 370 complaints filed. A lot of them are about ice cream trucks, which as the season progresses, I think one of the things that happened this year, although we sent out the notice that they need to turn off when they're actually parked and serving customers, I think because so many people are within their dwelling units that the ice cream truck guys play so that people know that they're outside and maybe come out and buy from the truck. It's a difficult time for them because they've lost a lot of street business. That being said, they still do need to comply with the law. Some of the other issues in the community board are construction projects. There are sound limits. Well, there are two things that happen. Construction companies need to include noise mitigation measures for their construction activities. It could be individually for their devices, and it can also be for the insulating, like with sound blankets, the wall that surrounds most building construction sites. So the premise there is that if the equipment has some type of noise mitigation, the project is already starting out a little bit quieter than it would without any type of mitigation. And then in terms of a mechanism for enforcing a noise level, the council, probably in the last 2 years, amended the code to include an absolute decibel level that couldn't be exceeded. So our enforcement approach is twofold. One, we make sure that the construction noise is less than what is the maximum allowed by the code. And we also go through their noise mitigation plan to make sure that they've added mitigation measures to their devices as much as possible based on the situation. And one of the difficult parts of construction in New York is when they are doing foundation excavating. A lot of New York is built on rock, and so they need to get through that rock, which is also always a loud endeavor. And we always encourage them to get through it as quickly as possible. I've probably rambled on enough, and I'll just wait if there are specific questions. I'll try to clarify during that time period. Thank you for listening.
Jerry, we probably should make clear that maybe most of the complaints that people have had in the community lately involving late night parties and fireworks and cars racing up and down streets, those probably don't go to you. So they probably they
go to the police department. Yes, you're right.
Yes, they're not showing up on your lists of complaints. But it's helpful to understand what it is that DEP does do. And our next speaker, and I guess in the interest of full disclosure, I have to mention that I work for the Parks Department, and so does this gentleman, Deputy Inspector Benny McCants, the Director of Citywide Operations for the Parks Enforcement Patrol. He's very familiar with the Washington Heights Inwood area. He previously served as the captain in charge of all of the Manhattan PEP officers, and then they promoted him to this job over my objections, since I wanted to keep him. He was such a good captain. So Benny, are you with us? Benny?
That's a shame after that intro, Steve. It's like
Yeah, my God. Yeah, where is he? All right, let's move on. Maybe he'll be joining us later. That's a little, okay. Our next speaker is Emily Goldman, the Deputy Director for Beta NYC. And She has been analyzing and cataloging the 311 complaints generated from our community. And just yesterday, she works in association with the Borough President's Office. And just yesterday, the Borough President's Office released a report showing various statistics broken down by community board. And there are like 5 different categories of noise complaints. I'm hoping Emily can run through this for us.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so I work for Beta NYC. We work in partnership with the Manhattan Borough President's Office. And we do a lot when it comes to analyzing the data that's coming from communities in the hopes of allowing communities to make more informed decisions around issues coming up. So 311 is one of the main data sets that we continuously go back to and analyze on behalf of communities and community boards, because it's so representative of kind of the moment concerns among residents. So we've created this tool called BoardStat, which some of you may know about. It's a dashboard that updates daily with the full set of 311 data that's available on the New York City Open Data Platform. And it's broken down by community boards. So you can very easily, in just a couple of clicks, get to a tool in your browser that you can explore on your own to look at the 311 complaints broken down in numerous different ways that are actually specially tailored for community board purposes. So I would encourage you to take a look at boardstat.beta.nyc, where you yourself can kind of start digging into that 311 data as you see fit, since there's so many different conversations around these issues. One thing to keep in mind is that BoardStat is fed data directly from the Open Data Platform. There's a 1-day lag before the data populates into BoardStat. The other thing to keep in mind is that the New York City Open Data Platform itself right now, and the 311 data specifically, is experiencing some lags. And that is due to the unprecedented volume of 311 complaints coming through relating to the COVID situation, and also the fact that that 311 workers are working remotely. So there, you may notice some lags. I think that has come up in various conversations. But for the most part, it is mostly accurate, especially if you give it a little bit of patience. So yeah, with regard to the noise issues in 311, there are maybe almost a dozen. I could check real quick if need be, but different types of noise complaints. The main agencies that deal with noise complaints are the NYPD, DEP, and I think also EDC has a couple of categories of noise complaints that go to them. But the majority of them go to the New York Police Department. But there really are almost a dozen different types of noise complaints. Noise commercial, noise residential, noise street sidewalk, just building construction noise, noise at places of worship, helicopter noise. And then within each of those categories, there's subcategories. So depending on what exactly you want to look at, you want to be aware of those distinctions so that you can get your data in the most sort of relevant way to what you yourself are looking at. And mainly today, I'm also here to just really listen and learn from this community discussion. We are going to be having a BoardStat and 311 data training early next week. And so for the purposes of today, I'm going to really be listening so that we can tailor that training to be responsive to the kinds of things that community members are looking to understand through the data.
Do you have the stats that were released by the Borough President's Office yesterday? There were some very stark figures there for the Board 12 area, for residential complaints and commercial complaints, and fireworks. There were at least 5 noise categories that must have been maybe in that top 10 tier of complaints generated by people here in Board 12.
Yeah, so in Board 12, I'm looking quickly at what Aldrin Bonilla came up with. He just plugged this into Board Stat. And basically for the year 2020, specifically for Community Board 12, so from January 1st to the present day, the top 10 complaint types within 311, noise, street, and sidewalk. This is again just for Community Board 12. Noise, street, and sidewalk is by far the most. There's like almost 18,000 complaints for noise, street, and sidewalk just for the year 2020 so far. That is followed by noise residential. The third is not a noise issue. The third is heat, hot water. The fourth is noise related to vehicles. The fifth is illegal fireworks, which is its own complaint type. It's not a noise per se. It's not doesn't say noise, but that is what it's about, and it's called illegal fireworks. And then the next is non-emergency police matter. That's the sixth complaint type, and that's probably so populous because social distancing and face mask issues are considered a non-emergency police matter. So that probably accounts for why that complaint type is the sixth highest in Community Board 12 over this past year of 2020, followed by illegal parking, unsanitary conditions, water issues, and then finally is noise commercial. And I think the interesting thing to notice about that is that noise commercial is often one of the highest complaint types of the fact that it's substantially less than noise, street, sidewalk, noise residential, noise vehicle, non-emergency police matter, and illegal fireworks even is clearly representing the fact that commercial businesses have been mostly shut down. So there's not going to be the same amount of noise generated from commercial establishments as we would expect in a non-COVID year. So yeah, so that's just a quick sample of the top complaint types in Community Board 12 this past year. There's a lot of different ways we could cut this data, but that's kind of the most the most overview way we have of looking at it.
And I said, and if I'm not mistaken, the number of street and the noise street sidewalk complaint category, did you say 18,000?
Almost 17.8 thousand. Yeah, 17.8.
I think that may be the highest number for any district in Manhattan. All right, thank you. And our last speaker, and certainly not least, is a renowned expert on noise issues, Dr. Arlene Bronzaft, a board member for Grow NYC, used to be known as the Council on the Environment, and she probably launched her career in Inwood, working on behalf of the students at PS 98 in a groundbreaking study where she found that the students who had classrooms on the side of the building closest to the elevated subway tracks were suffering because their lessons were continually disrupted by the noise from the subway, and the kids on the other side of the building didn't suffer as much and did better in school. And her work forced the MTA to put soundproofing on those tracks. So as far as I'm concerned, there are generations of students at PS 98 and the community as a whole that owe Dr. Bronzaft a huge debt of gratitude. And we're so happy that she has continued her role in this issue and has agreed to help us once again. Dr. Bronzaft, I hope you're still there. Hello, doctor?
I see her. I think you're on mute, doctor.
She's muted, Steve.
All right. Doctor, could you unmute yourself?
There we go.
Do you hear me now? All right. Yes?
Yes, we can hear
Yes,
you.
Okay.
yes.
All right. So I don't know if I should thank Inwood for directing my career to noise. But yes, children exposed to elevated train noise by the 6th grade were nearly a year behind in learning compared to the children on the quiet side of the building. And that was a landmark study. But what made that study special is that it was the parents of the children of PS 98 that asked me to help them. Just as this community is meeting tonight, one of the mothers of a child at that school was a student of mine at Lehman College. And she said, please, can you help our children? The other wonderful person was the principal, Mark Shapiro of PS 98, that provided me with all the reading scores and all the data. I have to compliment the Department of Environmental Protection because they came in and did all the measurements of the sound levels in those classrooms. And so I had the cooperation of DP, Board of Education, parents, and I was able to conduct a study. And the findings were quite remarkable, though my 8-year-old child at that time couldn't understand why her mother had to do a study when it seemed so obvious that children's learning would be impeded by passing trains. Children and the teachers couldn't teach. But it was what followed that's important for this community. I, as an academic, got the paper published in a peer-reviewed journal, but I did not help the mothers of those children and the children if I didn't go further. And so I had to do something to try to ameliorate the sound. The Board of Education agreed to put acoustical ceilings in the classroom, and the Transit Authority came up with a method to quiet the tracks adjacent to the school. Now you're going to ask, how did these two agencies respond so quickly? I usually use the word miracles to explain that, but let me tell you what I did have. I had the parents of the community, I had the community, we had the public officials, we had the media, the press, and we had everyone saying, we don't just have a problem, we have to come up with a solution. And when the solution came up, it was immediately introduced. And of course, I had to go back to the school to find out if the children now were doing better after the noise had been lessened. And so let me tell you what the answer was. Yes, children on both sides of the building were reading at the same level. But the TA didn't stop there. I worked with the TA and they said they would ameliorate the noise at schools similarly located near tracks, but people also live near the tracks. And so the TA agreed to start quieting the tracks with the procedures that were developed in Inwood. We came up with solutions. That's the key thing. I've been listening and I know there are problems, but problems can also yield solutions. And everything at that time came together. Yes, this is not the late 70s. This is 2020. And the COVID situation has added another element. But I strongly believe that what we're talking about, particularly 18,000 complaints about sidewalk noise, that I think if the people got together as they did then, they would be able to come up with a solution. Now remember, noise is a health issue. I do not want to just call it a quality of life issue. Noise, we now know, creates stress. Stress can lead to physical disorders. And we have studies that have linked noise to cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure. And we know that children not only need quiet schools, but they need quiet homes. And if this sidewalk noise is that loud, and if these children were going to school and they weren't getting the sleep they would need to do well in school, then we'd have problems. I believe in something else also. We have a noise code, and that means we have laws that stipulate how people are to behave with respect to sound and imposing it on other people. Have to confess, my husband was an attorney and my 3 children are attorneys. So I very much believe in the law. I also keep the Constitution next to my bed. So that I have the Constitution, which I refer to. But if we don't enforce the laws we pass, then what we are doing is we're saying they're not worth the paper they're written on. And number 2, if we don't enforce the noise code and those laws, it gives license for us to break other laws. And that's why it is important to enforce the code. It is a health issue when we talk about noise, and we know that people need their sleep, their rest. I understand the implications of the COVID situation. I've been writing blogs about it every 3 or 4 days. So I know that we're going to have to sit down, look at the particular problem, and come up with solutions. I think the people in the community now, the police department, DP, and all the members of the board can very well do what we did all those years ago when we came up with ways of quieting the classrooms. This is not rocket science, but there has to be a will to do it. And I think this community can lead the way. Just as this community demonstrated that noise was harmful to children's learning, and other studies confirmed it, it was still in this community that the first 2 studies were done. The problems that you've addressed tonight are similar to the ones that I've heard from people in South Brooklyn, from the Bronx, from other parts of Manhattan. And so again, you could sort of lead the way by coming up with recommendations of trying to lessen the din and recognize it's difficult. People want to let out more sounds. People are frustrated. I'm a psychologist. I understand the stress of COVID. But I think that we can, if we work together, come up with solutions that will reduce the level of sound in the community and improve the health and the quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bronzoff. You're going to be our official advisor and cheerleader as we continue this effort in the coming months. Deputy Inspector McCants, are you now with us? Does anybody see Deputy Inspector McCants' name?
I don't see it, Steve.
You don't see it. Okay. All right. So before we go into the public session, Jonathan, do you have that video clip?
Yes.
All right.
I'm gonna share it right now.
Okay. And do you know where we're going to stop it at one point? And
Yes. Yes, we know that.
okay, great. All right. So this is a short video, about 2 minutes or so, put together by the Facebook group, Wahai and Inwood for Respectful Decibel Levels. It's just a compilation highlighting the different noise, some of the different noise problems that have been in the community in the last few months, and out of respect for people's sensitivities, and we've excised a small portion which shows an incident where a woman was stripping in public among a whole crowd of people. Does this clip have sound with it?
That'd be fitting that there'd be no sound on the video that's about sound.
Yeah, gosh. It's counterintuitive. So I think, we had the fireworks began. I think many people feel that this was the worst year for fireworks we've had in a very long time. And, it began, I think, towards the end of May, maybe early June, and was just relentless. So almost every single night.
Jonathan might not be able to hear us for the sound because he's playing it. So we'll see.
Okay, that's it. All right, looks like we have a lot of people in the chat who want to be able to speak. Is somebody keeping track of the names?
Yeah, Jonathan, if you can just give us the names based on whoever raised their hand first. I'm sorry that my battery lost. I had a power outage where I live. So if you can just give us a list of names, Jonathan.
Yes, we have Tanya. We have someone called Nick, right? And then we have Julia Mayer. Then Ain.
I'm sorry, Jonathan. What was the second name?
Tanya. Tanya's first. Try and
Tanya was the first one, yeah. And the second one was Mig, M-I-G.
Okay. All right. Well, so let's let's go with Tanya. Tanya is a member of Community Board 12. Tanya, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. First of all, I want to thank Dr. Arlene Bronzaft for that wonderful presentation, and to Steve Simon for hosting this forum today. I am wanted to say that I think that we need to think about what's going to happen next. We need to think about how we're going to hold each other accountable for addressing these issues, because I can say that I have been reaching out to people, electeds, everybody about this issue, begging for help. And I would like to know how we're going to address it. And I would propose that we think about starting a task force, and that would help us to move forward to address this. And hopefully, I don't know if Dr. Bronzaft would be interested in being a part of that, or even leading that. But I think that we need to find a way to not just talk about it tonight and then it just goes away, but that we actually have a mechanism in place in order to make sure that we are addressing these specific issues and really targeting solutions for different issues. And that task force, can be made up of a lot of people here, as well as the community members who are directly impacted by it. I wanted to say something about the video. It's unfortunate that we could not hear that video, because the point of it was to hear it, and to hear what we have endured in our communities. I was literally driven out of my own apartment and had to stay in another area of the community because I just, was driven out. I want to say that there were parts of the video that we could not show. There was a naked stripper that actually performed in our community around a bunch of guys. And this is what the community had to look at. And I just thought that everybody here, if this is what the community had to endure, everybody here should see it and have to see what we go through. I just want to pitch that and say that we should think about how we're going to be accountable, because I've been very disappointed in the response to what we've been enduring here. And I know I've been fighting as a community board member for years about this issue. I have a scroll of 311s. I have met with people at the 33rd all the way up to lieutenants and about this issue, and I got no solutions, no response. And it's just unfortunate. So what I want to see is we have a lot of solutions that our group has come up with, the Facebook group and I and others, and we'll be talking about that. But I want to make sure that there's a mechanism in place to hold us all accountable to make sure we actually act on that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tanya. And I should mention that we certainly don't expect tonight to be the end all and be all in having the community board deal with this issue. And I expect the committee that I chair, which you're a member of, will continue to look into this and act on this issue. You've got our attention. You've hit us over the head with a sledgehammer. And Curtis Young is on this call. He's the chair of the Public Safety Committee. He is also going to be giving his committees, devoting his committee's attention to this issue as well. And maybe what we should do is what you've suggested, create a separate task force to deal with it. So there'll be more discussion on that point. The next, Jonathan, who's next?
The next one is MIG.
MID?
It's-
MID?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Migdalia.
Yeah.
Oh, Medalia, go
Go
ahead.
No, I wanted to talk about, I think a couple of weeks ago, I was on a call on public safety. I'm not sure of the guy who was talking. He had a Haitian kind of thick accent. I'm not really sure his name, so I apologize for not knowing his name. So he was talking about culture in our community, and I got very offended. It didn't grasp me right away what he was trying to explain, but he was trying to say that culturally, this is what happens in the community of Hispanic, and that's not true. I'm a Hispanic woman, been in the community for 33 years, and that's not the way I run, that's not the way I act. And that's not double parking and hanging out and drinking, speed, going, riding on in the sidewalks, all of these things that you guys are claiming culture, that needs to stop. That culture, I want to say some other stuff, but I'm not. But it just really needs to stop. It's not culturally, it's a bad behavior of folks that sit around here and do nothing all day but hang out in the streets. And quite frankly, I see it every day. I don't see anything happening. I don't see nobody giving out tickets, double parking, all the bad things that can make you hate this community, I've seen. So I like to know, what are we going to do from this moment on to get this fixed as a community? We're ready to work, and I hope the 34 Precinct Community Board 12 is ready to work. We don't need to talk, we need to do action. It's about action and getting things done. Because I see people here looking a little bored right now, but we really need to get it done because we live here. Everybody gets in their car, and about the time they get home, and they're home in their quiet place. We have to suffer. So I like to see things get done. I don't have a problem getting involved, but let's get it done. Let's stop talking, because we already know what the noise level is here. We already know it. We don't need stats. We don't need numbers. We know it because you see it every single day, and especially on Dykeman. That's it.
All right.
That's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next.
Okay,
Jonathan?
the next one is Dog Walker. Dog Walker. Is he there? Right. I think he's not there. Okay. Let's try with Domingo Esteves.
Yeah, I hear the how everybody's feeling, and I think it's important to move beyond just understanding that this issue goes beyond a lot of us, where I see some people have been directly impacted. The woman that spoke prior, living in this community, you understand this is nothing new. But I think what the times is teaching us is that we have to go beyond just looking to be, well, a lot of these issues, when you involve police and you involve a lot of these different agencies, they disproportionately impact people of color always. It's not about culture. It's the disproportionality and the negative impact that policing has. What I think is, and I think Tanya raises a good point with the whole developing a task force for this, is how do we go beyond just thinking of what we think when we think public safety and start holding people accountable. But we also have to look at the stats for what they are. A lot of the 311 calls, we're talking about hot water and etc., right? We have to address people's conditions before we start laying expectations down on people that are just figuring out ways of engaging whatever they're going to engage in. And COVID has a lot to do with this, you know. But what I would say is, let's think outside of the box and let's start thinking of ways of being able to redefine public safety where disproportionately people of color are not going to be impacted because some people don't understand intersectionality. Thank you.
All right, next.
Okay, the next one we have Janet Harmon. Janet?
Janet, is it Janet Harmon?
Yeah. Janet, can you mute yourself right now? Okay, let's move on to the next one. The next one is Wendy Life. Wendy?
I'm here.
Wendy Life. All right, go ahead.
Hello. I
Yes.
I can't see people. I'm speaking for the residents of Chittenden Avenue, which is for the 34th precinct. And we have had problems even before the COVID of people parking on our street and hanging out, and it's become unbearable and unlivable since COVID. We have had no help from the 34th precinct. We've been working with Officer Brian Polster, who is our neighborhood precinct contact person. No help at all. And what's been happening is that now people have come, they take their chairs out of the back of their car, they set up all night, they do their hair, they picnic. It's become like a restaurant, and then it turns into a club. And the problem that we all can't understand is that it's clearly marked on our street, no parking, no standing. That alone should be enough for the 34th precinct to enforce ticketing and moving these cars out. Yet that never happens, never happens. The cars sit, park, stand, are there 365, 24/7, 365, no matter what the weather is. So what we are proposing is that if people are going to park there anyway, then change the parking signs to legal parking and let the residents of the neighborhood, because these people who are parking and hanging out do not live on the street, do not live in the neighborhood. So what we're proposing is to change the signs to legal parking so that residents of this area who are in desperate need of street parking, because we have a Con Ed project going on that's taken many street parking spaces away. We have a 2-year plus parking, Castle Village parking that's taken parking away. We are desperately in need of street parking. So change the sign on the west side of Chittenden Avenue to let the residents legally park. And that way we would get rid of the problem of people coming, hanging out. And I mean, we have all kinds of things. You're talking about strippers. We have people using our flower beds and our street as a toilet. There are sex acts on the wall. If any of you are familiar with Chittenden Avenue and that wall, I understand it's a nice place to come look at the sunset, but we have people having sex on the wall with no impunity, nothing. And they are there, they take their chairs out and they're all night. It's unbearable. So what we are asking is to have the street signs changed.
Yes,
well, maybe that's the answer.
It is the answer, but we can't seem to get through to DOT. I'm working with Senator Jackson's office. I've approached them, and I believe they are in touch with DOT, and I believe they're getting some pushback. And we are trying to push this through because this would be the answer to our problem.
All right, so Ebenezer, could you also take note of that and talk to DOT about this suggestion?
Sure. Jonathan, how many more questions do we have lined up?
We have Isidro Medina, and then we have Aisha.
All All right.
Steve, if I could just make a comment on Wendy, Wendy, we know about the area. NCO Boy has been working very aggressively in that area. In the last 28 days, they've written 20 double parkers in that area. It was actually the NCO Brian Polster who actually brought up the idea to make that parking for residents over there. So we're the ones who came up with the idea, and we'd like to see that happen. That would help us out a lot. To dedicate the NCOs to be parked over there, they have to cover the whole NCO Boy sector. So we will continue to do the enforcement over there. We'll continue to go down there and move people along. I'm sure that what Wendy's seeing is something that is unbearable, but it was a lot worse, and we've done we've brought a lot back. We've actually pulled back a lot of the issues over there, but we are the ones who brought up that solution that should be an area where they do put up the no parking.
Yeah, have you passed that on to a DOT? Do they know that you support the idea?
Yes, we passed on. We did a walkthrough. We did an intel report on it, and we're waiting to hear a response. But it also needs a little push from other people in the community, not just the police department. So any help along anybody in this forum that can push that along, that would be very helpful. That was an idea we came up with, that if we had parking here, the residents would have more parking, and it wouldn't be an area where people could set up chairs and hopefully help with this with the situation over there. But it's become a lot better than before. These things creep up on you, and you have a lot of other burning fires around the precinct. But right away when we got on it, we attacked it. And Brian Polster, a great officer. He's been in the neighborhood a long time. I'm sure Wendy could tell you he's very knowledgeable, and he has been attacking it aggressively. So we'll continue to do that and follow through with that plan. But anything to get that parking approved would definitely help us greatly.
All right. Well, hopefully we can have the community board support you on that.
Okay.
Thank you. Who is
Isidro
Isidro next? Okay, Isidro is also a member of the community board. He's the chair of our licensing committee.
Thank you, Steve, for putting this meeting together, along with our chair, Elisa. Thank you so much. I've been living in the community for 40 years. Really proud of this community, proud of the work that our precincts are doing in the community, given the circumstances. I'm going to point out something that Miguelina or Miguel actually said about the misperception that noise is closely related to Latino culture. Not acceptable, because that's being racist outright. I'm going also to point out something about perception that everywhere you go to a restaurant, is noisy and loud. That has to be addressed as well. We cannot allow this community to be mislabeled in any way, shape, or form. We have struggled together. We're going to keep fighting together. And I hope that the elected officials that are listening to all of this are going to work in ways that will benefit us all. I must say that I have called 311 a number of times in issues dealing with mountain bikes going around. And from what I see on how barely I can see the plates, I don't see that they're from the neighborhood. They come from abroad, because when I'm driving from the Bronx, I see them coming to Manhattan. So to say that they're from the community is not only misleading, but it's not acceptable. We have many cars that come by 180th and 181st to go like really fast, disrespecting the neighbors really late at night, where we have also trucks that are completely parked and never moved 24/7. And that's something that I believe that Wendy stated about needing parking spots. I counted it, and I also documented over 20 trucks that are left overnight. And these are commercial trucks making loud noises that do not allow our neighbors to sleep. That's not fair. It's not fair, and our community should not be in any way, shape, or form allowed to go through this problem. That has to be addressed. That came out in a press conference where the trucks were left on 24/7 and never moved. That is something that even our community board members have been affected by in the neighborhood because of the noise of these trucks. That's not acceptable. We must also understand that when we go to our local restaurants and bars to spend our local money, we're helping our small businesses. If you see a problem, address it right there and then with the management. Address it right there and then, because you want to be part of the solution. You want to be part of the process. So I'm willing to work with people that want to form a task force, and I think it's really a cool idea to do that. But really grateful for the work that the NYPD is doing all along. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, thank you. Who's next?
Yeah, Aisha is the next one. So Aisha, please go ahead.
Okay, Aisha is also a member of the community board.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I want to highlight what Domingo said. I also agree with what Isidro just said in relation to some of the commercial activity and with the trucks and things like that. But I want to speak to the fact that some of this board's actions also contributes to some of the dynamics. When I say that, I speak in regards to what DOT has continuously been allowed to do, which continues to restrict access to parking. We also have had discussions about the need for residential parking. In the area of the district that I live in, something that we face is noise from trucks idling 3, 4, 5 in the morning, and it's mostly servicing Columbia University. We also have the Haven Plaza that has been implemented against community will. We filled rooms with the amount of people that were against that project, and still it was forced and pushed through. I don't even agree that it was proper process the way that it was pushed through. And what we have had is fire trucks that have been beeping their horn. We have had police cars as well as trucks that can't get through the normal way that they would have. And then we have honking all day long during the daytime when the traffic is the worst. The gate from Columbia University at nighttime is loud. There's the alarm on Haven Avenue as well that goes off. I'm not really sure why, but it's like being in the middle of some type of drill with an extremely loud alarm blaring through the community. I'm not sure who they're trying to reach with that, because I would assume if the alarm is going off, that there should also be a quiet system that they are able to alert the police or whoever needs to know about that. I'm not sure why the whole community needs to be aware that Columbia University has an alarm going on. I want to make sure that when we are having this discussion, that we're also talking about the institution's responsibility in that conversation as well. And definitely giving light to the intersectionality. I want to be honest and say that growing up, I've known some of those guys that may be motorcyclists driving their cars around. Some of it, quite frankly, stems from boredom, stems from lack of access to what I now know as I've gotten older is maybe if there were different types of programs, if our institutions that are in the community gave more access to those youth in the community to kinds of activity, then maybe we wouldn't have that. In regards to the fireworks, there are communities that actually have fireworks celebrations, right? And I'm looking at the people in my community, some who are just like, I want my child to celebrate the 4th of July like anyone else. So then what do, right? The point that I'm making is not to excuse the noise, absolutely have a zero tolerance to what that allows our neighbors to live peacefully. But I think that we also need to be creative and smart about thinking about the problem. Thank you for your time.
All right.
Yeah, we have the next one, Bernard Grubman.
After Bernard, I'll like to have a shot unless someone else has another thing to say, okay?
All right, Bernard, please.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Right. Yes.
Okay, so I'm actually in the 33rd precinct, and I'm on 164th Street. And last Saturday night there was a party that just was lasting along until 4 o'clock in the morning, when finally, after I would say 20 calls to the switchboard at the 33rd and 311 complaints, most of which were closed as unfounded or not necessary. Finally, a car showed up and the cops got out of the car and shut down the party at 4 in the morning. I just moved to the neighborhood last year, and last year it was not like this. There was some noise every once in a while,
but there was nothing like this. This is actually seen anything like this, where people every weekend in front of these businesses.
Excuse me, Bernard, hold up for a moment. We seem to have some interference on this call.
What happened is that, guys, if you're not talking, please mute yourself and allow the other participants to speak.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, so from there are businesses, there's two hair salons and some business that I can't even tell you what they actually do there. And they're between 601 and 609 West 161st Street. And every weekend there's been a huge party. Loud. 4th of July, it sounded like, it was so loud, it was rumbling the windows in my apartment and rattling stuff in my apartment. And it's every weekend. And finally I had my landlord actually call up the landlord of that building over there. And Sunday it was silent and Monday it was silent. And I noticed a strange thing about the block was that there was nobody really dealing any drugs those days. Like the days where there's a party, it's like you would not believe some of the stuff that's going on the street. Plus my building was broken into for the first time apparently in 4 years. And the package room was robbed 3 times since these parties have started. So my point is that the noise creates a situation in which it must feel as though it's more comfortable to commit crime. Because the noise is happening and there's no enforcement, therefore there must be no enforcement for anything else. I mean, that's my layman's assumption of all this. And,
all right.
And
all right.
One more thing.
Yeah, please.
One more thing. That we were talking about the subway noise in front of the train, in front of the schools. The subway still has to run. There is no reason to have a party at 4 o'clock in the morning. There's no amelioration. It is illegal. Absolutely. And that's it. I mean, and we need help That's it.
All right, we hear you. Thank you.
Scott, may I jump in with a real question for Dr. Arlene?
Who's asking the question?
This is Nobles. I think I was after the next public member. Sorry about that, Eleazar.
Okay, Noble, go ahead.
Thanks, Jonathan. Dr. Arlene, a quick question for you, because it seems like obviously there is a very large theme here, which is completely understandable. It's the mix of socioeconomic systems with, definitely a splash of, segregation when it comes to real estate and things like that. There's a whole through line here. That being said, do you have any examples of cities that are doing it correctly through either zoning or task force where we do come together and we can figure these things out? Do you have any examples of any cities that are doing that we can learn from and try to apply?
Dr. Arlene, you're on mute, by the way.
Yes, please, Dr. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to talk to the crime issue because I have written papers on crime and noise. And the last speaker was correct, because if people are drinking and people are carrying on, and then they walk out into the streets, that crime could follow. So I would suggest, and I'll forward the paper, I think I may have, to several people. I've also addressed the issue of crime and noise. Now you're talking about other cities. I will also forward to you a blog that I just did, because Paris has a situation. Remember, COVID changed things. Things are worse. The parties have increased, and the former speaker addressed that. So I'm going to forward to you what programs they've been introducing to try to remedy the increase in the noise situation because of COVID. Is that what you've asked? Yes?
Yes.
So I'm going to forward that to you.
All right. And we'll be in touch further.
Okay. The second thing, let me tell you, New York City is quite good when it comes to the noise issue because it has served as a leader in the past to other cities as to what you can do to lessen noise. And I think the people who have spoken have come up with excellent suggestions. Remember, I said problems need solutions. And we came up with the solutions the last time we had the problem in Inwood. And I think the solutions that have been recommended could really be implemented.
All right, thank you.
Steve,
We
I
have
have
to
a
try
comment
to
to
zip. We have to try to zip through this because we were hoping to wrap things up at around 8:30. So please try to keep your remarks as concise as possible. Who's next?
Who's next, Jonathan? Because I'd like to make a comment.
Angel Vasquez.
All right, I'll go after him.
Hi, thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Alyssa. So I think the statistics are out. The unemployment rate in New York City is around 20%. We can probably safely assume that that's disproportionately affecting our community in Upper Manhattan, being a low-income, middle-class community up here. And I'm not going to say that I can prove causation, but I'm sure that there's a strong correlation here. And so I understand that some of the elected officials have been proposing implementing some type of billionaires tax, millionaires tax, taxing the rich. And I also understand that the governor is not a huge fan of that. However, if he's not, let's get creative. There's a ton of do-gooders in our city that have plenty of money that they can come in here and create programs to give people opportunities. Because the reason why this is happening is because people are unemployed. They don't have jobs, they don't have places to go, and they don't have other things to do. And so if we do not provide opportunities for these individuals, we're going to continue to see the same problem. It's not going to be ameliorated by just looking at the micro level, oh, this particular spot or this particular restaurant or that particular corner. It's not going to solve the problem. We have to give people opportunity. And we have plenty of do-gooders, as I mentioned, in New York City and in New York State that can assist and provide funding for this neighborhood to create programs. I understand that the city budget and the state budget is terrible at this moment. However, there are opportunities for public and private partnerships where we can bring in these do-gooders, come in and create programs, job opportunities for people in this community.
All right, thank you.
I'm gonna try and make a comment now.
Yeah, go ahead.
Pretty much on the opportunity, the window of opportunity that Angel just created. And I'm gonna quote the study because the data is there, just like Angel said, as to from NYC beta from the office of Manhattan Borough President's office. The conclusion in his 1, 2, 3, the fourth note, and I encourage each and every one of you that can assist through their training next week to please go and understand how 311 can either help you or not help you. So I'm gonna read a quote straight from the study. It says, there might be a correlation between gentrification and increased noise complaints in New York City. If you notice, if you look at the data, and I encourage you guys to please download this data from NYC Beta, the bigger number of noise complaints are in Manhattan, Borough, in Community Board 3, Community Board 10, Community Board 11, and Community Board 12. And I'll repeat again, Community Board 3, 10, 11, and 12, which if you know the data, you'll understand that those are the community boards that have the largest concentration of minorities. And with that, I'll again encourage you guys to come and assist and participate and take advantage of this such wonderful research study.
Okay, we'll have the next one, Catherine F. Catherine.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Catherine. I do want to second to acknowledge those here who also related to the Parks Department. I live right by the park. I've heard the trees go down today. We've got a tough week ahead, and I thank you for the work that you're about to start and for taking care of our safety. I've lived in Inwood for a long time. I've lived in different parts of the neighborhood. And there's a couple of things that I want to say. I think that, it's taken me all of this meeting to calm down, because this is a psychological issue, as the doctor rightly said, and it is a form of violence perpetuated on the residents of this neighborhood with the level of noise and what happens here. I've lived here, like I said, a long time, and what I think one of the causes are as to why people flock to this part of the city to do whatever they want to do is also linked with a permissiveness. See, the businesses in our area that serve alcohol and that had a club-like atmosphere have repeatedly broken their licensing agreements over time. And that also includes the issue with La Marina. And La Marina was closed down, but the perception of our neighborhood didn't change with that. And so, whereas absolutely everything is exacerbated by COVID, this is not something that just happened these past few months. If you talk to long-term residents who live all throughout the neighborhood, this is something that's been going on for quite a few years, and COVID made it worse. And yes, for people like me who've been unemployed for 4.5 months, there's very little that I feel that I am left able to take psychologically. But also to the frontline workers that are my neighbors. I live near a nurse who said to me 3 weeks into the fireworks, I don't think I'm going to work safe. And that's really upsetting. And then there's the broader picture of how our neighborhood is so dismissed by the people that behave the way that they do here. The drag racing, the bringing of these giant sound systems that I only used to see in nightclubs, and now apparently you can use with a Bluetooth phone. And they hang out and they party on the streets. Then they leave, and they leave all of this garbage everywhere that we now have to get together as a community. And we see on Facebook every Saturday morning, come and help clean up. And part of me feels like, why? Because maybe you don't live here, but I'm the one who's not sleeping, and now I'm the one who's got to, in a pandemic, go through the parks and pick up after you. This is a beautiful neighborhood with a very broad history, a complex history, a unique history to the island of Manhattan, never mind New York itself. And it has been given space to show up as like this. And I want to say something very clear and specific. I am a solutions-orientated person. I've spoken to Senator Jackson about coming together and reaching out to the community, and I've mentioned it in passing to our Assembly member De La Rosa. I am a solutions-positive person. I don't see why an Australian immigrant can't partner up with a Dominican immigrant and a 5 generations New Yorker to elevate our neighborhood. I'm that person. However, I want to make it very clear, and I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of people that live in this neighborhood who have just thrown the towel in, that don't want to be on this call because they don't see the point. We feel fundamentally let down by our electeds, by the police, and by the community board. And I'm one of those people that believes wholeheartedly in divesting funds from the police into community resources and groups. I am all for that, and considering a new way of developing law, order, enforcement, and community spirit. We keep us safe. But right now, we are looking at a group of people here who are up for election, and you have not been here. We talk on Facebook, we share our results, and most of us haven't had a reply to an email, a phone call, a Facebook, a tweet. And the only person I've seen out in Manhattan, to be quite frank, is Madam Borough President, dealing with things on all levels. And to the point where I wanted her to come up here, and I have a personal contact, and I said, get her up here, because our direct elected officials are not walking the streets at night. I've politely, so many times over years, asked, would you mind terribly turning your sound down? I use my posh Mary Poppins voice for that. Or I pretend I have a baby at home that's trying to sleep. I've been threatened with sexual violence. I've been called epithets. You need to be out in the streets that elected you and work hand in hand. No photo ops, no press. All of us together. And you can count on me, and I will be the positive ray of sunshine that this will take. But you needed to hear this. You needed to hear that you failed us and you let us down, and we are exhausted. So I too look forward to a very positive future moving forward. And as I said, you can count on me to be there and your partner in this action. But we need to hear you fundamentally take responsibility for the depths that it has gone to, such that we have to have an emergency hearing. I thank you for your time, and I thank you for your patience.
All right, thank you.
The next one is Wendy Guardado.
Hello, can you
Wendy?
hear me? Yes. Can
Yes.
everyone- Great. So thank you so much for that speech. I feel like she just stated everything that was on my mind, but I also want to speak on another community that oftentimes is not really heard of during these type of conversations is people with disabilities and students with disabilities. In District 6, which is a district that primarily holds all of the schools within Washington Heights, we have over 4,000 students that have a disability, making about 22% of the student population. These students have sensory and auditory issues. These noises outside are detrimental to their actual success. They're adversely affected by the environment that they're in. I work in an organization that helps students with disabilities. I was a teacher for 7 years, working with students with disabilities. Their environment is crucial for them to succeed. We have gotten many phone calls during COVID time, but also throughout the years in Washington Heights about noise affecting students with autism, noise affecting students with ADHD, them not getting sleep, having to react to fireworks outside, having to react to the parties happening all day, all night. This is going to affect many communities and many subgroups of our communities. As we move towards reopening schools, I can only imagine how this noise pollution, how the parties, how the intensive group gatherings that I've seen all over my neighborhood are going to affect my students. And I'm speaking in a very passionately way because my kids are being affected. Like they literally cannot sleep. It's not even about me at this point. They cannot sleep. They cannot do their work. The parents are stressed out with all this remote learning. It's just beyond levels where we think that our precincts are not really helping us because we put in 311 calls all the time and they're being closed as unfounded, no evidence, even though we have videos, even though we have photographs that many of these parents share with me as well. One solution that I think would be imperative for Spanish speaking communities is that 311 is not accessible in Spanish on mobile devices. They are on the website because there is a Google Translate button, but on mobile devices, they are not. And 311 is used mostly through phones, especially in Spanish speaking communities. So one solution for that in order to keep actual tracking would be to make sure that people that speak Spanish have access to 311 on their mobile devices. So again, students with disabilities are going to have to be thought of in this course. Everything that has been said is true. Things are not being fixed. We need to move forward with solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan?
Yeah, the next one is Andrea Arroyo.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thank you. So I live on 159 on the west side of Broadway, and I am part of this community. I'm also part of the Latinx community, and I have to tell you, no culture condones noise pollution. I'm an artist and I appreciate cultural expressions, and I know that music is culture when it's played live, when it connects us in our humanity, when it celebrates diversity and build bridges. But most importantly, when it's used to foster a community building. Blasting music is not culture, it's noise violence. And that fosters anxiety and it fosters fear. We have to understand that even the United Nations recognizes sleep deprivation and noise, including loud music, as actual forms of torture. So this is about creating a healthy environment. It's about protecting our children. It's about honoring our elders. And it's ultimately about taking care of each other. I am against criminalization of our community, of course, but why are we underserved when it comes to noise pollution? Why aren't we protected the same way that wealthier neighborhoods are protected? You know, this is way beyond quote unquote quality of life. This is about social justice. We all deserve a healthy living environment. You know, At night, of course, we need to sleep. And you know what? Sleep is a human right. So let's think about, the constant assault of loud noises on a baby trying to sleep, on a teenager trying to study, on a nurse trying to rest after a double shift, on anyone with post-traumatic stress disorder. We have a lot of veterans in our community, a lot of elderly people who have PTSD and anxiety, a lot of people with health issues. And let's remember, a lot of us are also grieving because of COVID. So, and in general, all of us are trying to survive in the pandemic, and really at any time, because New York City is a tough city, and we need our homes to be a refuge. We need our homes to be safe and to be quiet. So let's understand that this is a public health issue and ultimately a social justice issue. So let's create an environment that is of respect and is of solidarity. We are here, I think most of us, to create change for everyone's benefit. And let's all remember that kindness and solidarity are transformative. So let's just work on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have Cheryl Miller.
Cheryl Miller?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Okay, so I'm just like, I can't believe half of what I'm hearing. But in all of this, what I'm not hearing really anybody mentioning, and what to me is a big concern, if I remember, I think Steve Simon last week at the Committee of the Whole, I'm not sure if he had said that out of all the COVID deaths in New York City, there was something like 900 and some odd people in this area that died of COVID. And, given everything that New York City went through, I think people have a short memory. People that are hanging out in large groups and everything. I mean, what I'm seeing is people are not socially distanced. They're not wearing masks. Do we really want to have like a blowout of COVID in this area? And on that note, I wanted to know whose responsibility is it to enforce when they see large groups not social distancing and wearing masks? Is that something that the police is supposed to enforce? Or is it the NCOs? Whose responsibility is that? And one more thing is that some of you know me, and I live on 165th Street and Broadway. I'm in a hospital zone. Okay, I live across the street from Morgan Stanley Children's Hospital, and 3 blocks from my house is Columbia. Okay, the emergency room and the part of the hospital. And every single night, and sometimes during the day, I'm hearing people blasting their car stereos that my windows are actually shaking. And I live on a low floor. What is the, isn't there a noise code law about people blasting music in a hospital zone? So can anybody answer that? Whose responsibility is it to enforce when they're seeing large groups that are not social distancing or wearing masks?
Okay. Mr. Klossner, is that a question you can respond to?
Hi, I'm going to jump in for this for Cheryl.
I'm sorry?
I'm going to jump in and answer this.
Okay.
There is, Cheryl, I know, thank you for calling Detective Stoll like 2 weeks ago. So I think that's really important that you kind of build a relationship with the police department and the community affairs officer, the NCOs. So you know what, that's something that you should call 911 on, and we will send a sector car over and respond. If we see the violation happening in front of us, we can probably summons them, or most of the time these cars are just passing through. There's a major throughway that way through Columbia. I know there's a major street 175, 179 going to the GW. So are these people passing by? Are they hanging out at their specific time? Is there something that you could talk to Detective Stoll about?
Well, what I'm here, sometimes it sounds like they're like in passing, and sometimes it sounds like they're just hanging out over here.
Okay.
I have on occasion seen cars just hanging out by the Chase Bank over here.
Yeah, that's unacceptable. So what I would recommend is just call 911, and sometimes just the mere presence of seeing an RMP driving by, it'll kind of make them move along. If it's just something passing by, obviously by the time you call 911 and a sector car responds, they're gone. So please reach out to 911 or Detective Stoll.
I didn't know that 911 handles that kind of thing. I've called 911 and then they've sent me over to the police department.
Well, it's a non-emergency, so you know what? Call the precinct. Do you have the number to the precinct?
Yes, I do. It's in my contacts on my phone.
Okay, great. So just call us, and we will send a sector car or the NCO over.
Okay, so whose responsibility is it to enforce when they're seeing large groups of people, like with the partying now and everything else? Whose responsibility is that?
Well, if there's if there's a grouping disorderly, then obviously the police department.
Okay, because I heard that the mayor said that the police are not enforcing that anymore.
Steve.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I had to skip out.
You know, Cheryl,
I can jump in too.
Could you?
Office of Special Enforcement. My office has taken over most of the social distancing and face covering violation enforcement, and it is largely focused now on in stores. But the conditions that you're describing, where there's a large group that is acting disorderly, as the previous speaker said, then that really does become a police matter, right? It's not just that the concern is that people are gathering without masks, it's that they are also doing so in a disruptive way, and that the police department still is being tasked with addressing the underlying conditions of the loud disruptive behavior. And so, you know, I strongly suggest that people take advantage of the resource that was just offered.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next one is Ben Lopez.
Who is this?
Ben Lopez.
Ben Lopez?
Yeah.
All right.
Steve, we have 15 more minutes that we would like to get as many questions as we can.
Yeah,
well,
let's.
If you'd like, I can start a timer for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ben Lopez, please.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Perfect. I'll be short and brief. I brought up this subject to our local politicians, including Community Board 12, about a kiosk that's located at 450 West 162nd Street. I brought it up to Gail Brewer's office. This has been 3 years that we've been fighting as a community, where we have vagrants playing music, being loud in the middle of the night, defecating, urinating, depositing all their garbage, as well as everything that they drink in terms of beer and liquor and so forth. I agree with Catherine when she says, you bring it up to our local politicians and we've got no response. As a community, we're a historic district. We are a 501c3 organization, and we take care of our own neighborhood. We haven't asked anybody for help since we've gone to community board and asked for assistance. We got zero. You know what we got called? Elitists, because we're homeowners. We were not given the time of day when it came to our request, our petition, our 911, 311, and calls to the precinct. The only politician that has responded to our area has been Gail Brewer. So I say to you, when you're sitting here having this meeting and you're listening to a lot of things coming your way, you need to be problem solvers. That's what we do as a community. We take care of our own thing now. We're not asking you guys for anything. But the one thing I am asking, and I've had this conversation with Captain Bello, Chief Pichardo, we want that kiosk shut down. And if you guys aren't going to do it, the community will do it, because we're not getting any help from anybody in this community. And I feel sorry for so many people who have complained tonight because their problems are not resolved. But I appreciate you, at least you're listening. Thank you.
Are you referring to one of the Link NYC kiosks?
That is correct.
Okay.
And there are two in our area. Why do we need two? One that I'm talking about is a little bit hidden. So what's happening is people hide there in the middle of the night. We come to the community board with complaints, petitions, everything, and nobody's listened to us. Our local politicians, the same thing. So all I'm saying to you is we don't need two. We need this kiosk shut down.
All right, Ebenezer, can we talk about that tomorrow? All right, who's next?
Next one is Barbara Woods.
All right. Do we have Claudia Scher and Maggie Clark coming up on the list?
What was his name?
Claudia Scher and Maggie Clark.
What would you are you looking at whether they're panelists or attendees?
No,
I haven't seen them raise their hands.
No, I got messages from both of them that they've tried to.
Yes, Maggie is on the stack, but Gloria is not on the stack.
Claudia?
No, it's not on the stack. Maggie, yes.
I'll be really fast.
All right, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So I'm Barbara Woods. Thank you so much. I'm just thrilled that so many of you are here to listen to our concerns, and I feel very hopeful for the first time in ages that some things will get done with some patrols, some enforcing of the illegal activities of, summons and things like that happen. And also I just want to bring up one thing with the parks, because there's these elaborate parties that have been going on that I know is so stressful for any of the parks people as well. And once you've had these what amounts to like $3,000 and $5,000 worth of parties with liquor bottles left all over, I mean, it's just a huge mess. Silly string, I mean, that's just part of the noise. But like I said, we're here to help. We're going to keep the task force going, and I can actually give you a little taste of some of our fireworks. I'm an expert at this point between the high-pitched ones, the ones that sound like cannons. I've had 911 callers worried about my safety. When I called, they thought I was being shot at. And I just want you to know that, and thank you so much. We're here to help and make sure none of this happens in the coming months.
All right, that's true. Some of these fireworks can be mistaken for gunshots.
Yes.
Who's next?
Okay, the next one is Maggie Clark.
Maggie
Clark.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. I'm a member of the Wahi and Inwood for respectful decibel levels. I've lived on Riverside Drive for 41 years. By the way, this group has 500 people in it, and there's a whole bunch of us who have been waiting to get called on, who signed up at 6:30 that you skipped over. I founded DIN Action, Dykeman Inwood Noise Action, in 2008 for these same reasons that we're talking tonight. We had hundreds of members then. We got nowhere. People just drifted away because we got nowhere. We want some answers. CB12 has 15 times the noise complaints of some other community boards. There are hundreds of noise complaints per night. And yet, I have experienced, and so have many others, that our 311 tickets are closed out in as little as 4 minutes. How can you possibly come by, especially when I'm watching and you're not coming by and you're closing these tickets out? That makes us infuriated. Do you not have enough police cars or police men to go out and look? Do you not have enough decibel meters? How many do you have? How many are trained to use these decibel meters? The complaints largely come between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. How many cars and officers do you have out at that time as compared to, say, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5? Are you instructed by downtown not to enforce fireworks laws, muffler noise, any other kind of party noise in the street? If so, who is telling you to slow pedal the enforcement? Regarding board stat, you may have missed it in the video, which did actually have audio with it, which somehow was not heard. And the board stat is missing a lot of the data. We went through our own data and we saw that it wasn't included in the board stat. So somehow board stat is got imperfections, and I can't tell you how many times I called 311 and 911 over the last 3 months. It would be helpful for board stat to not only show information on a 24-hour daily basis, but also be able to see smaller periods of time like overnight, because that's when a lot of the problems are occurring. Thank you.
All right.
All right. We have Victor Saldaña.
Hi, good evening, team. First of all, thank you for inviting me. I used to be part of the community board. I used to live in Washington Heights. I grew up. I know there was a lot of noise, but I'm talking on behalf of Cedar Avenue Block Association. We live right across the river in the Bronx, and we hear the noise. We live right across University Heights Bridge until 7th Street, and we take the bus across town, and sometimes the streets are blocked by cars. We're trying to get to our jobs at the Allen Hospital, at Milstein and Choney, the Children's Hospital 168, but we have to call out sick sometimes because we can't sleep at night because the noise we hear it across the river, which is shocking because the water amplifies the noise even more. And we call 50, we've worked with our precincts here in the Bronx, and they have helped us deter the noise by actually patrolling the streets, making sure they're giving summons and taking speakers away. And I know recently they've been working with the 34th. So I just want to give thanks to the 34th as well, because they've been closing streets down on 9th Avenue, which is where most of the noise that gets the Bronx get heard. I think a solution is to make sure that we continue patrolling, like the speaker before mentioned, if we can get cops out there just to make sure the summons are given and taking speakers away. I think it's the best solution, just to get back on that and take away, because this will help deter most of these people from coming. And like many have mentioned before, we have license plates. We took down information, and most of these people have like New Jersey and Pennsylvania license plates. They're not from around here. So we need to make sure that we enforce the laws that the council has passed, as is the noise law, to make sure that we put summons and take the speakers away and hopefully deter these people from being outside and putting loudspeakers on. Thank you.
Okay, finally, we have Aileen King. Aileen? Aileen?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, hello, thank you. I can repeat everything that everybody has said, but my question is, why is there an absence of police at all? If I go along, I live on St. Nicholas Avenue, and I never see a police officer. Every Friday, every Sunday. Is there a problem? No, there is all this noise. We don't need statistics. If you just are there, you will hear it, you will see it. I don't understand why this goes on all the time for years now, and there is no one there walking around addressing this. I'm really asking of the police department why there is no one there at all, ever.
Deputy Inspector Andrea, would you want to respond?
Sure, I'm on. The question that Mrs. King has is why she don't see police officers. We turn out roughly 6 on the 4 to 12 shift, where I guess most of them listening to where the sound begins. We turn out anywhere from 6 to 8 vehicles. With those 6 to 8 vehicles, I also have NCOs. They're across St. Nick. They're up in Inwood. They're over by Vermelia, Dykeman, Post, Sherman. We cover 179 to 220. We are out in every location. What we were experienced was behind George Washington High School. It looked like the Fast and the Furious. soon as COVID started going through phase one. I quickly closed that down from one night of lawlessness. I closed it down. Only residents can go by. I had to use 2 of my police cars, one from 190 in Amsterdam to 190 and Fort George Hill. Then we had the situation. I'm sorry, did somebody say something? So then I had the situation on Dykeman, which was growing out of control, all the way to La Marina. And I had to dedicate another car to that location to stop some of the parties going on. What we then started to experience is 9th Avenue, 207th Street, what everybody saw with that one female who was stripping. I quickly shut that down the very next night. I could tell you that we're experiencing something we haven't experienced before. A lot of the clubs are closed throughout the city. People are still going to gather. They're not socially distancing. They are gathering. They have mobile speakers, as somebody had mentioned. We are very aggressive in tackling these issues. We were able to stop George Washington High School from being a problem. That was one day of complete lawlessness. By the time the cops could get there, one of my cops had to grab a guy who literally put one of those Revel scooters right into the police car and knocked himself to the ground. And then they were gathered by a large group. So we quickly solved that issue. 207th Street, it was on a Sunday. I haven't taken vacation all week. I happened to be on vacation. I quickly came up with a plan while I was on vacation, and we stopped that issue from happening. So this popping up of these parties has become an issue. We're dedicating a lot of resources to stop it. We've been very successful. We'll continue to come up with a plan. I currently came up with a plan where I have taken 2 officers from every platoon, which I carry 3 platoons on one shift, and they're going to be dedicated to work from 8 o'clock at night till 4 in the morning to cover at least behind George Washington High School and Dykeman. And this way the NCOs and the other resources I have can dedicate themselves to 9th Avenue, 207, the Speedway. And also we're seeing a little uptick now in the parks.
I'm asking, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm really asking to say Nichols Avenue and 193rd Street. That is.
I just explained St. Nick Avenue, 193rd Street. We have a car dedicated to that location.
But it goes on and on every night.
I know, Mrs. King, I know what you're saying, but we have to attack the biggest problematic locations. I did have 193 officers assigned to this command. I'm down to 153 officers. Every situation is a concern. The most dangerous conditions are going to get the biggest attention, of course. And we are going to continue to attack this, and hopefully we can start resolving the issue. The biggest problem we're having now is we're getting pushback. We're getting people out in the street that want to challenge officers and try to get them on videotape taking a proactive approach to things where they may have to end up locking a person up. And so the officers have to be very careful on how they approach every situation, because we want to continue to foster a good relationship with the community by still addressing the noise complaints and the quality of life conditions. So I understand your concerns. I promise you, I am not asleep at the wheel. We will continue to address this situation. I will sit down with my SOL and try to come up with a more precise plan, maybe to help to zone in on 193 and St. Nick. But I assure you, we've cleaned up a lot of other growing conditions. As one of the gentlemen was saying, I believe it was Mr. King from across the river in Cedar Avenue. Cedar Avenue used to be a location in the Bronx where it looked like the Fast and Furious. That was going to go happen in front of behind G-Dubs. We got rid of it. It grew over there. And they had such a bad condition over there that they had shots fired and their officers shut down the location. So now this group of individuals are looking for another place to make home. We will not let that occur. No, it wasn't Mr. King. It was Victor.
Sorry to cut you off there, Deputy. Steve Simon, as my secretarial role, I want to give you a time check that is about a minute from 8:30.
Yeah, okay. If I could just ask the deputy inspector, somebody has suggested on Facebook that we set up a DUI checkpoint on Dykeman Street to catch the people who are hanging out there drinking late at night. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. If we can, we always set up checkpoints in the summer months to set up a checkpoint does take a lot of resources, Mr. Simon. So, being with that be kept in mind, it's a little bit more problematic when you're handling. We handle about 8,000 radio runs and 6,301 jobs in a 28-day period. Everything that we measure is a 20-day period, I'll repeat. So with that being in mind, to do a checkpoint takes 4 units out of service.
Oh, okay.
So that is what we're having we'll juggle. The manpower issues along with the most problematic locations. We can certainly pick a night, but on a Friday, Saturday, a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I need those units really keeping an eye on the crowd control issues on 9th Avenue, 207 by the Speedway, George Washington High School, or Triumph Park, Inwood Hill Park, by Indian Road up there, and some of the other locations. But we'll certainly take a look closer at St. Nick. St. Nick, it is loud sometimes at St. Nick. I will give you that. We don't see the disorderly crowds as we do in these other locations, but we can certainly, time to time, make sure we check up on that for Mrs. King.
All right, appreciate that. And then maybe at least then we can feel as though we accomplished at least one thing tonight.
Absolutely.
All right,
We're accomplishing a lot more things. Trust me when I tell you, we're moving in the right
Okay.
direction. And
Okay.
the cops here care about this community.
Thank you. Jonathan, can we call Claudia Scher?
I thought it was 8:30 already.
Well, I want to make sure that Claudia Scher at least gets a chance to speak.
She's not even on the list.
She's not on the list?
No, he's not on the list.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. I'm here. Thank you very much. Thank you for unmuting me. I have been trying to speak. I put my name in the chat at 6:25.
What happened is that your name is Claudia.
It's all good. It's all good. We'll start the 2 minutes
Yes.
now. Go for it.
Okay. Thank you for listening to me. I really appreciate this offer. First of all, I want to actually echo what Chairperson Bueno said at the beginning of the meeting, which is that we're all in this together. And I really appreciate the opportunity of being able to come together to meet with all of you and to have met so many of my neighbors in the past while. So to introduce myself, on May 17th, I founded, thinking it was going to be a very small thing, I founded a Facebook group called Washington Heights and Inwood for Respectful Decibel Levels, due to a very loud car playing music outside, and I couldn't hear. I'm a music teacher and I was trying to teach online and I couldn't hear my students. And it went on for 8 hours. The 311 requests, this is new this year, I know this has never happened before. The 311 requests got closed out within about 5 to 10 minutes. And I would like to know why that is. Is it that the system was over flooded, overpowered? I understand how difficult this time has been for everyone. Or why are they just being closed? Why aren't they just left open until the problem is resolved? In any case, I founded the group. I had no idea that now it would grow so quickly. We have over 600 members. We also have a Spanish speaking part of the group. And I've heard so many stories over these past months from, I would say the strongest one is there's a woman whose mother passed away after the fireworks. She suffered an anxiety attack on July 4th, and it turned into a full-blown heart attack, and a week later, her mother had passed away. She actually wanted to speak, but we didn't know, her English isn't so strong, and so that was an issue. Whether she might be able to speak here, but she did want her story told, and so that is a story I wanted to tell, just of the effects of noise. But we've had many other stories as well. You've heard some of them tonight, and I also want to say that we've been trying to come up with some solutions as well, and some of these solutions they really need to be a collaborative effort, as everybody here has said. And so I'm very glad to see that we have so many people together. And I love the idea of having a group of us that all works together, and it works together in two ways. And I think the one long-term way is we try to find outlets for people now, because it's difficult now when you don't have an outlet. We try to find programs, we try to create things together. We have a public a public campaign over the effects of noise and how we can work together on that. And then we also have short-term questions. How can we, tomorrow night, how can we sleep? This weekend, I had 2 parties that began, both of them began at 1 a.m. and they ended at 3:30 a.m. And you hear dun da 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 da. You know that song. You know that song. You've heard it this summer. Now I know the song, but you know that I'm just saying from 1 to 3:30 a.m. it wasn't possible to sleep. And so because we have 600 people in this group, and we'd all like to work together and find some solutions, we've created a list of some ideas. And if it's possible, we'd like to know where we can direct all those ideas and work with you together in this task force.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Claudia. We're at 3 minutes, 30 seconds.
All right.
But if you can, in the questions chat, put up a link to your Facebook page and any other URL you'd like to direct people to, because I think you were doing that in the end, but we do have to hurry this up. I apologize.
Yeah, thank you, Noble.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Claudia. Great points, great comments, and great suggestions. I really love it. Steve, like to wrap it up.
Yeah. Well, how many people do we have left on the list, Jonathan?
Well, actually, we have like 15 people, right?
Yeah. And for
I don't think we have
sake
the enough time.
Yeah, for the sake of our panelists' time, that they've been extremely good at first coming and showing up at 6:30. I'd like to.
All right, can we tell the people that we didn't get to that they should email their comments to us, and we will make sure that we review them and invite them and give them a chance to speak at our next meeting?
Also, Steve, we should also say that we have, community board meetings with public safety, transportation committee. Definitely look at the community board schedule when we're back in session, and we can talk about this all the time.
Right.
Yes. Thank you for the comment.
Do we have a commitment now to move forward with the task force?
Something that we're going to start looking into. And yes, you have our commitment to take a serious approach as to the kind of issues that are affecting each and every one of us. Business, community, residents, all of us are being affected equally, some more than others. Some of the people that are being affected may not have, like you said in the beginning, that don't feel comfortable enough to present and articulate their thoughts in English, but they have also a saying into this. It is all of us. It's not just the voice of the few. It is the voice of the many. And I think that we all agree that yes, we need a series of issues that need to be addressed, as you said. So Steve would like to wrap it up.
So maybe one of our official elected wants to say something. Yes. All right. We have Senator Robert.
First, let me thank CB12 and for inviting the elected public officials to be a part of this hearing, to listen to constituents about the issues and concerns that impact their quality of life. I say to you that my office has directly been involved with many of the constituents trying to address the issues, even going back to before July 4th when all of the fireworks were going off, and the deputy inspector held a meeting at the Y talking about the issues and concerns, and my staff were attending the 33rd and other community precinct meetings. This is an ongoing problem that we have to address, and coming together, as we talked about, is very important. I think that we need to look at what we can do collectively to communicate with our neighbors, how to be respectful of other people's rights regarding quality of life issues that impact them. Obviously, de-escalation is very, very important. The deputy inspector said, we don't want to get into a confrontation where something happens and the crowd gathers around and videotapes of this, that, and the other, and people getting arrested. Obviously, de-escalation is the key in order to address this. But I think that we need to communicate with everyone that while they may want to hang out, some people hang out and party to 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, many individuals, majority of the people are sleeping at that time with their families, and they need to have rest. Rest is very important in the process of staying up to date what's going on. So I thank you for holding this. I think that we will continue to have meetings to discuss this and constantly refocusing about what we're doing and how we're doing it in order to make the quality of life better for everyone. And I thank you.
Carmen de la Rosa.
Thank you. I also want to thank the board for allowing us the opportunity to be here today to listen. We have heard the concerns of our community. We've received the emails, the calls, the tweets, and yes, there are growing concerns about noise pollution. I think that we are in the middle of a perfect storm, which includes everything that's been happening with COVID-19 and the uprisings against police brutality that have been happening in our communities and throughout really the nation. And so I think that in this moment, it is an opportunity for us to come together to acknowledge some of the things that have been worrisome in our community. For example, the fireworks was something that all of us have been afflicted by. I live on Isham Street. Vermilion sounds like a war zone every single night, including last night. And there has to be more community-oriented ways of dealing with that. I personally have gone out to speak to some of the folks that are using fireworks. We've also been visiting the small businesses to make sure that social distancing is happening, that masks are being worn, and that people understand that there are people who are recovering from COVID, who have lost loved ones, and that there is a trauma that's inflicted on communities when noise is present and when they feel as though they cannot get a reprieve from what is happening out in the streets. I would say that as we go forward, the task force idea is a great idea. I also think it's important for us to take into account how policing affects our communities and communities of color, and coming together with a proposal that is community driven. I personally have been working with some cure violence organizations to try and develop some steps that I think we can take collectively. I'd love to share that with the board. And in addition, also planning a local day of action where we can go out as a community, using the community board as well, to engage with some of the youth in our community and some of the other people that may be marginalized at this moment. I also want to bring up an issue that was brought up by Angel Vasquez, which is what as a state we could be doing. Yes, we're in dire straits when it comes to a budget. I know that Robert and I on the state level have been working tremendously hard to make sure that we're imposing a millionaire's tax. We both carry legislation around that. We support that wholeheartedly. We understand that the only way to make an impact is by funding programming in our community. But at the end of the day, this is about going out and finding the solutions. And I look forward to doing that with you all and continuing the conversation. I see this as the beginning and certainly not the end. My office is open and available. We've set up remote phone numbers, but our office is available now for constituent visits on a limited basis because we're keeping to social distancing. And I am always available via email at carmen@carmendelarosa.org. Please email me. I'm happy to continue the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. Thank you so much. I'd like to take on Steve before we close our meeting. Say thank you to each and every person who took their time and effort to make this happen. I think this is the kind of effort that makes our community go and makes our community productive. And the dialogue, the kind of dialogue, the civility, and the productive ideas that have come under under the table here are tremendously helpful. Thank you to the police department, both the 34th and the 33rd. Thank you to all the agencies, city agencies that came and gave such a group of insight information. Thank you again for showing up.
Elias said, this is Congressman Espaillat. I would like to say a couple of words.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I want to thank everybody that came into the Zoom call and who also put the questions up in the chat. This is quality of life. It continues to be an issue in many areas, not just noise, but also The streets are very dirty. The cars are speeding, and we must do something about it. For that reason, I confronted Rebel. They now suspended their operations citywide. They will come to the neighborhood and walk through the neighborhood to see the terrain here, because one of the very bad accidents occurred right on Fairview and Wadsworth Terrace, one of the steepest hills in the city, if not the steepest hill in the city of New York. And pedestrians were in danger and in jeopardy. And for that reason and other reasons, they stopped their operations, and they're willing to engage the community now. So I'm looking forward to the task force being put together so they can come before the task force in the future and explain what are their plans to make their company safer for everybody in the city. In addition to that, and in the same tone that I heard tonight that people want action, I encourage everyone to come out this Saturday at noon. We're gonna have a major cleanup of the community. The community is very dirty. I was in Washington for 2 weeks fighting on the budget. And when I came back, I was really taken aback by the level of garbage in the streets, particularly in the commercial strips, in the commercial arteries. And so we're gonna have a major cleanup. And if we need to do it every week, every Saturday, we'll do it. And we'll push for the city agencies to provide more services for this neighborhood. With regards to the noise, I look forward to working with everybody to engage everyone, including the young people or the folks that are making the noise. I don't think we're gonna be able to arrest ourselves out of this issue. We're gonna have to engage people, educate them, build some level of consciousness to care for your neighbor and to be really cognizant of the kind of noise you're generating that impacts on others. Crime, homicides, although too many, there's only been 3, we're at the same rate as last year, 3 homicides for the year. That's amazing for a community that used to average over 100 homicides a year. And we're far lower than the rest of the city. And with regards to shootings, also, we're far lower than other neighborhoods in the city. But we have this quality of life issue that I think we must not allow to define our neighborhood. And I think someone said that we're all in this together. I think that we are. You know, whether you're hearing a conga, and I don't know how to necessarily play the percussion quietly, or you're hearing a soprano vocalize, and my brother is a lyric tenor, for some that may not know. So I grew up around someone vocalizing in the morning. I think that we need to be conscious with each other, and we need to take care of each other. So I thank you all for being part of this meeting.
All right, thank you. A number of people mentioned the borough president tonight. The borough president is with us. Can we allow her to speak as well?
I just want to also echo that this has been a tremendous hearing. I go to a lot with community boards, as you know, and I really want to congratulate you, the chair of the health committee, and all the members who spoke, how you treated the wonderful way in which you treated the public and how everybody got to speak. And there wasn't a sense of we're not open for business. It was what a community board should be doing, and congratulations. And I look forward to the task force. I believe on this call, we did ask the Center for Court Innovation to join us because they are a voice and perhaps a place where people could do something local. That would be up to the community board. And we also asked the Peace Institute to join us because this is what they do. They listen and try to come up in a non-judgmental way with solutions. And I think one of the other issues, and I want to thank Beta NYC because their data is important, and I want to thank the chair for inviting them. But I also want to say, to pick up on what the assembly member stated in terms of ways that the community could be involved, because apparently in Harlem, where you do have, as the congressman indicated, you have very low crime statistics, congratulations, but that's not the case in parts of Harlem. And so Fridays, sometimes in the early evening on a street corner, hundreds of people will show up to talk and basically with young people take over the corner. And we say, this is our city, this is our community, and young people get to talk about what their concerns are. And you find, of course, the most amazingly fabulous discussions taking place. So something like that, you know, might be also another way to deal with, we're all in this together. And then finally, I just want to say, I'll certainly be joining the congressman for the trash pickup, but you know, it is unfortunate that, and I know the city council members worked on it, but it's a 65% cut to weekday service and 100% cut to weekend service. That's a challenge that I think we could all agree on needs to change some way. I also want to say, I get confused, and I'm supposed to know this, who's doing what in terms of city agencies. And I have great respect for the work that Christian is doing on the special enforcement. And now I've learned what the sheriff does, and I have a better sense. But I think it's hard on the police to know what they're supposed to do. So as part of this task force, I think Washington Heights could perhaps be the leader in understanding who does what, and then making it clear to a very, very fabulously informed community. Because in today's post-COVID, post-other issues, we need to make that clear, because you've had, Steve, some amazing city agencies come and present, and each one is excellent. But I think when you're on the ground, sometimes it's hard to know what to do. And I think if we can make that clearer, then everybody would be more comfortable doing their job, and perhaps some of these issues would be addressed. So I hope that's helpful, but more importantly, congratulations. I go to a lot of freaking Zooms, and I have to say, this is one of the best. Congratulations.
Well, Gail, thank you for your support, and whatever we do will only be possible with your continued support and assistance. And thank you for Natalie for all she has done to help us out. I do feel bad about the fact that we weren't able to reach everyone, and there are a number of people who wanted a chance to speak. I want them to contact our office, make sure we know who they are, so we can invite them and give them, first dibs on the next meeting, so they do have a chance to speak to us.
And Steve, I know it's late. Would it be possible for me to say just a few brief words?
Well, only if your name is Mark Levine.
It is indeed. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Community Board 12, for convening this. I'll try and be brief because I know we're over time. This really was an overwhelmingly respectful, solution-oriented conversation, and I want to thank everyone who spoke for that. And of course, our colleagues in the 33rd and 34th Precinct and the agencies. I chair the Health Committee, and I do see noise as a public health problem. I also live in Southern Washington Heights, as I think many of you know, on 163rd Street, where we've had a lot of challenges with noise so far this summer. And this is a problem that we all have to work together to solve. It does impact the mental health of our community, especially those who have to work, those who are grieving, those who have health challenges, and much more. I couldn't help but observing just how many of the problems described tonight are related to vehicles, to cars, many of which are coming from outside the community. And I'm pushing legislation in the city council that would institute residential parking permits in New York City, in neighborhoods like ours. This is something being done successfully in other parts of the country, not in New York City, but it's an important way to ensure that that limited spaces in our community are not taken up by folks coming from elsewhere. And I think it might have a secondary benefit of helping to alleviate some of the problems that are described here. And, you know, in the context in which we're all extremely sensitive to the need to avoid any kind of overly aggressive enforcement, particularly on young people of color, a focus on vehicles is something different. You can ticket a vehicle. You don't take a vehicle to jail. You can boot a vehicle. There are enforcement options we have at our disposal that are unique to going after the vehicles. And I'd like to work with you in my capacity as a council member and chair of the health committee to do that. And lastly, I know the board president and others tonight really believe in data transparency. And I don't think we quite resolved the questions around calls to 311 and the way in which those are being cleared very quickly. I'd like to flag that as a pending issue that we need to resolve. We need to make sure that 311 is a reliable way of reporting and tracking incidents, and of course, most importantly, getting a response. And so I'm committed to work with all of you in that capacity in the city council on that issue. I'm going to wrap it up there. I look forward to a continued dialogue and work mutually, respectfully to address these issues together, all of Uptown. And thanks again to all of you for participating tonight.
Thank you. And the keynote is respectful. That's the key word for the night. Thank you very much. And you made some good points, and we look forward to working with you. I believe I just want to thank again Deputy Chief Green, Deputy Inspector Andrea, Captain Chung, Christian Klosner, Jerry Kelpin. I love the fact that you're still there after 35 years. Emily Goldman, Dr. Bronzaft, looking forward to working with you again. And we're going to try to do whatever we can to come up with solutions. Thank you so much. Eliezer, do you have a final word? Did we lose you? All right. I think that brings our hearing to a close. And please, if you didn't get a chance to speak tonight, contact our office, send us your comments, or at least let us know your information so we can make sure that you're on the list or high up on the list the next time we have one of these hearings. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Steve. Have a great night. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Great night.
Thank you, everyone.